Right. In the Gestalt way, we know that the organism is an organism, no matter if we speak about an individual or about a sum of individuals. So, if we think of this organism approach in Gestalt, we can understand that what happens in one individual, in one organism, can happen to multi-individual organisms. So the idea of collective trauma has to do basically with any number of people, and not only with big societies. It can be a family, it can be a community, and also it can be a whole society, a whole nation. It can be. So we defined the trauma as a disruption in the continuity of the self-sense of existence, of the flow of personal identity, of who I am. The same is for the collective trauma. The collective trauma is when let's say a community, a multi-individual organism enters in a traumatic state, in a state that it's not produced voluntarily by the population, let's say, or by the group, but it happens, like a war, let's say, or an economical crisis, or some bad events in a family, on a family level, and the flow, the process of this group life is disrupted, is interrupted in a way. It's violated, to change, without being asked. We will speak on multiple levels today, but what we say, it's valid for families as well, for communities as well, for societies. So in a way, it's we speak about a transpersonal level of trauma now. It's over the person as an individual. What is important to know that a big event, here we have, let's say, little subgroups. Here are the individuals, and here is the big scale. They all belong to this scale. Okay? So if, let's imagine that happens a war or a natural destruction, whatever, the event is lived on two levels. It's lived on this level, on a mass scale, but also it is experienced on an, of course here, but it's also experienced here on an individual level. It's important to know that these two levels, they interact. Happens a war. The individuals experience the war in their individual reality. But at the same time, in their individual reality, they experience how the collective organism of them is dealing with the event. For example, in my family, the reflection of a war, let's say, can be quality A, but the reflection of what happens in the whole society that I belong, or in the community that I belong, it can be a secondary effect B. This is what I mean by interaction of this. It's clear this. So a collective trauma creates a a different individual reality to the individuals of the community who are experiencing first the effects of the collective trauma on their lives as individuals, but also they are experiencing how their organism deals with the trauma. It's reflecting, it's mutual reflection. And of course with their reactions they affect this. It's like this going. So we can have, for example, in fascist regimes, with the torturings that they happen, we can have physical destructions. It's now we have the refugees, it's wars, it's illnesses. In the Middle Age it was epidemic situations, invasions, earthquakes, tsunami, whatever. So in a way, it's the collective trauma is individualized, and the people experience the individualized collective experience as life lessons, let's say, lessons taught by life, because they see what happens on a bigger scale, bigger than their individual life. So they say, ah, this is what's happening, and they try to integrate it, and like a life lesson, let's say. But the individual reflection of the collective trauma, it's rooted on the collective experience. It's individual experience. Financial crisis reflects directly on me, but the roots, but it is rooted, this trauma, on the collective phenomenon. This, we must never forget this double, two-level interaction. And sometimes we don't have or are not aware of this parallel movement. Sometimes we stuck here, and sometimes we stuck here. We follow only this. And it's important for us as therapists to be aware of these two levels, or when we work with people from collective trauma, I mean not in the acute situation, but afterwards, to give both the possibilities for them to work on both levels. Now, anyway, if we want to deal with a traumatic event, as we said yesterday, after the traumatic event, usually we go on living. But the problem is the energy captured, grasped, entrapped in our bodies. That if it was flight, it would be depression in similar situations, like the traumatic original event, or it can be anger if it was a fight, that we were paralyzed, we could not fight. So we need to working with trauma, I mean after the acute event, is actually what we said yesterday, to give meaning, create a different background, to give the chance to give meaning. This means we cannot do this if we don't experience the feelings, the entrapped feelings, like the list we did yesterday here. If we don't use words, if we don't frame, if we become aware of, if we do not give meaning to it, the meaning it had to us, like in the exercise you did, and the new meaning that can be generated in us. In order to do this, we need work. Work is meaning work on the level of meaning, but it needs to be, work means it must be expressed, spoken, dealt with, listen other people, exchange what we need to exchange, opinions, whatever, share feelings and all this. And in order to happen this on a collective level, If it is an individual, can meet the therapist or a friend or whatever. But imagine on a multi-individual organism, actually what they need, because a family can go for, even for family therapy can go, but a nation therapy does not yet exist. So it cannot go. So the only way to work with the collective trauma, not on this level, but on this level, on this dimension, on this scale, is that the community members, the collective organism members, need each other and need the community also. So it's important to work to have a communal or national healthy institutions, very rare phenomenon, extremely rare phenomenon, who can provide the space for such exchanges and meetings, and also to provide and also it is important for the individuals of the community to have the chance to meet each other and open this thing, talk, but not talk on the level of who is better, the left party or the right party, our party is better. No, speak about how I personally give meaning to this or that happened. Not speak, oh, we had the tsunami and the government is invalid because they didn't do this, we must change government. This is simply expression of anger or sometimes of a childish need to be taken care of, or many other things can be. But I don't mean this, I mean actual work. Work means not only as we work with therapists, but how we work when we share something, truly and humanly. We share honestly between us things. We need the others. So, in order to work the collective trauma, the persons of the community need each other and chances for exchange. So we have here need each other, one each other, and also we need space, this, provided by the community itself. An important phenomenon, this is what we can do. An important phenomenon that we should discuss about the collective trauma is that is the following one: that when the traumatic events happen, the disruption in the continuity of life is so huge that people do not have the time to work on all this. They just need to survive at that moment. Other generations was saying, for you now, you don't have problems. You can ask us how difficult it was for us not to have bread to eat or to be threatened to die and so on. So when it happens, you don't have to eat. You can be killed every moment. You don't work on meaning level. You just look to survive, how to survive. So sometimes generations do not have the time and the opportunity to do this work on a collective level. They don't have it, practically speaking, because things and effects out of traumas, collective traumas, can last decades, can last many years. So what they do, they give the task for this work to the next generation, to the younger generation. They transmit, let's say, the task to work on the trauma, to give meaning to the trauma, to the next oncoming generation. So they cannot, for example, it's like, because I cannot have the opportunity and the time to work on my shame, on my anger, on my humiliation, on my panic, on my desperation, I give these tasks to the younger generation coming. But
unconsciously?
Yes, most of the times unconsciously. So what happens is actually a version of projective identification here on a collective level, because the children of the next generation, they adopt these parts of the previous generation, and they integrate these parts in their reality, in their identity, personal identity, and they experience these parts, these tasks, as if it was their own need to work with this. But the next generation actually do not need to work with all these things, but they experience it as if they need. Like the mother who said yesterday that says to the child, protect me from a bad life, from a bad father, from a bad husband, or from whatever, and the child grows up with this task in her cells, imprinted in the body, in the mind, in the soul, on a psychic level also. So the next generation destroys already, it's destroyed already from the very first years, because they integrate, they are engraved like the little cows with a burning metal, iron, with the sign of the previous generation, anger, shame, threat, whatever it can be.
It's like the juice.
Yes, exactly. Also, this B is from generation to next generation, passing the task to deal with the trauma, and or also to part of the anger is also to react, like in when abusing is a trauma. It's important in therapy to have the direct confronting with the aggressor. So sometimes in generations happen this. They did to us this, we could not take revenge for what they did to us. Now it's your task to revenge your father, your mother, your whatever. And you can see it also on family level, and it's very funny in movies sometimes with the paranoid, they're totally schizoid, the mafia families, when they create on totally sick background a sense of family bond, but on a sick background of dealing drugs, prostitution, and so on. And one family attacks to family B. Family B reattacks, kills somebody, and then family A is very angry. We must take revenge. But they started. They forget this. Mm-hmm. And so it's a kind of revenge, but it's very sick there. But you can see very easily how it is passed in the members to revenge. I speak on movie level, but okay, even out of movies, in the island of Crete, for example, in us, it was the vendetta, the family vendetta, very much spread. They insulted our family. We must do something, and so on. So, but what happens is that when the old generation passes the task to the new generation, what happens is that they don't do it openly. Because if they do it openly, they have to deal with it. They have to become aware of it. They don't like it, they avoid it. So it starts a conspiracy of silence. This is the huge thing that happens. It's tragic and funny at the same time. And they don't speak about the events, they silence the events. Or they say, it happened this. Or they narrate, but they cannot enter in the experience. They cannot rework actually the experience. Or they don't say nothing. And also, it is remarkable that very often, just before dying, they open this issue to the children. Truly, they make the opening just before dying. And a critical phase about collective trauma is between 50 and 60 years, because then it is the change of generations. What will happen? It's a new history coming, a new historical step. It will be a reproduction of the old one, it will be something new, who knows? It depends on other influences that have the new next generation, which affect the new generation on how we'll deal with what passed. For example, it's more convenient to speak about societies, but it will become, we don't have the time to do it this today. It is very, very interesting if we speak about families, about our own families, about the famous, it's a wonderful, I love this theme, the family secrets. The things that are never spoken. And they are transmitted from one generation to the other, from one generation to the other. And this is why in the previous workshop we did, you remember what I said? Yes. That psychotherapy is a political action. It's politically, it's active. It's activism, the psychotherapy. Why? Because I stop the flow of collective trauma and of family secrets. By becoming aware of my position in the collective or family trauma or secret, I stop its transmission. It's toxic. I was using all the time the word toxic last time. I stop the intoxication of my children with what I carry from father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, and so on. And the family secret can a little bit be transformed. An abusive, let's say, grandfather can pass it to the grandfather, and he can adjust it to his own personality. An openly abusive grandfather can end up to a manipulative father. Manipulatively abusive father, let's say. In many ways, it changes this. But the choral idea of the transmitted trauma is there, or the transmitted experience. So the poor young generations, they remain with all the symptoms of the projective identification. You remember yesterday I told you, they remain lost, they cannot give meaning to things, to their lives, and believe me, it's incredible. I see it already in the adolescents, clients of mine in Greece. People of 20, 21 years old come for therapy because of panic attacks, huge panic attacks, stress, huge stress, and also complete loss of orientation, lost in space like that, floating, and a huge desensitization. Going away, desensitization of body, of needs. I don't know what it is need, I don't know what it is emotions. And usually behind that, if you dig a little bit, you will find some parents saying, now that we've got a crisis, you must, it's not time for you to think what you want to become. You must become something that you can earn money from it. And all this projective identification of the new members of the new generation with the ways of the old ones to face the crisis and they pass their ways to the new people. And believe me, it's shocking, this experience. Sometimes I see also the miracle, the new generation using positively interconnectivity and all these things that exist today. And they come, some people, some young people, I really feel jealous for them, of them, I mean, envy, I envy them. Already little work, and in 1-2 years they will be happy creatures, I mean, no problem, because you can see the power, the enthusiasm and the things in them. But more, it's the first case. Desensitization, disorientation, disruption of normal flow, huge shadow, alienated parts of self, I mean, loss of ability to give meaning to things, and non-recognition of emotion and needs. It's really terrible, really, really terrible. It's shocking also for me. So, and as you said many times, we in our lives, I hope we'll have the chance in the future to work more about the shadow and the alienated aspects of us, to keep the Gestalt terminology, and how we repeat scenarios in order to correct the past, to correct what made us put in our shadows some experiences. It's like the example I was telling you many times in the other workshops about love and eros we were doing, like the frog and the prince and the princess. The frog that needs a princess to kiss him as a frog in order to become a prince. So this means that I wait somebody from outside to heal my shadow in a way, to accept me as I am. But this happens only in fairy tales. In true life, the only way is to accept, is the work you did today. To accept what happened to me, to accept, if the shadow opens, to accept the feelings emerging from there, the depression, desperation, whatever, and go on. In fairy tales, there is a princess that kisses the frog and then receives her reward for the miracle. The beautiful prince, or the monster and the beautiful and the beauty house, you know, the fairy tale also. This is why on a collective level, you see, this is on a collective level through the years, or no times, because they're very old fairy tales. Also in legends we can see this, or in mythologies even. We can see the collective subconscious, unconscious, how it tries to deal with the trauma of being just human. We need to create this mythological aspect. And it's okay, it's a way. It's like the baby using the fantasy for the missing mother. But if the mother never comes and the baby becomes an adult, then the baby must do something to survive. Fantasy is a supportive tool. It's not a survival. It is a survival tool, but it's not survival itself. If I'm thirsty, maybe it can relieve me a little bit to imagine thirstiness. Or even in sex, if I need sex and I cannot have, there is always masturbation, but still it's not sex, and still it's not water, what I drink. Sometimes it can be, but it cannot be forever, this. So, mythologies and legends and all this and fairy tales is a way to deal with our human nature, but cannot substitute the true work, the real work with it. So sometimes the young generations, they enter this conspiracy of silence, and when they die, the old generation, the new generation are like that. And more they have, because projective identification sometimes produces a kind of anger also. Because what's happening to me? Why am I like that? And they cannot, if they don't work, they cannot name it. And so they transmit this to the next, plus, intensified. And it goes intoxication, and this is human history, if you see it, in ages, and empires and distractions. Actually, it's blood and violence, in a way, if you see it. Because it's intermediate ways to express all these things. And also, they feel all these symptoms, as I say, as if they are their own, but actually they are implanted to them, they are implantations to them, engraved in them. Also on a family level, and this is very tragic. This is very tragic. For example, the boy that takes the task to protect the mother from the abusive father, he does not manage to do it, of course, because the father is stronger and he's also afraid of the father. And then he reproduces the same scenario in protecting all the women he meets, as we said yesterday. And it cannot be effective. It's never. Because the original cause, it's not to protect the actual woman I meet, but it's to protect the projection of the mother to the woman. So, but this belongs to the past. We can never change it. It happened. So you can see this distraction coming and coming and coming and coming. Or on the contrary, we spoke about the abusive father. If we speak about the abusive mothers, the mother lions, that they literally eat the flesh of their daughters because of antagonism with them, or because of revenge of their own empty life. And in such cases, as we said yesterday, the father is absent and idealized, the father, in a way. And so the poor girl searches in all her future life, searches a kind of idealized masculine figure to correct this, to protect, but it will never happen. Only fairy tales. Yes. So, these are passing from generation, and the last aspect to finish with are the 4 levels that we can work with the collective trauma, but also the individual. Important, it's all the feelings we said yesterday, but in the collective trauma, it's a beautiful summary that can be done. It's work with anger plus shame. Anger is a very effective way, especially because anger, when it's frozen in the body, literally paralyzes the body. So sounds, movements, and all the experience of the frozen gestalts, of the frozen anger inside, it's important to be worked. You can see this in the violence between people when they are not aware of what kind of anger they were working, and they project it differently. My part is better than yours. No, my part is better than yours. And they start raising up violence, and because this is projected anger and ritualized in a dysfunctional way anger. Instead, if anger could be worked on an authentic level, it would be very important. And also, anger, and also an avoidance of anger is, what are the words? It's to mix it up with sadness or forgiveness. This is a very dangerous phase. I told you also last time, I think, or in the last time, that in abuse, a very dangerous phase is the forgiveness. Actually, there is no forgiveness. There can be no forgiveness, actually. Forgiveness, in a way, is because it can be, because it's finished, the event. I have to deal with the memory of the event. If we must not mix forgiveness with enlargement of space. Now we can contain, but this is not forgiving. It's different. Containing than forgiving. A very hard phase in therapeutic work with abuse, for example, is the phase of forgiveness, which comes after strong and deep work, because actually it's like re-bringing to the foreground the idealized aggressor, the aggressor that stopped to be aggressive anymore. And now I see the good figure, because I need to see the good figure. But actually, the aggressor is always the aggressor because it was in the past. That aggressor does never change. And usually forgiveness is a very risky phase in personal therapy, in individual therapy, because it's an excellent excuse to avoid further work, deeper work of acceptance. So also in a collective trauma, it's important sometimes anger can be transformed in forgiveness or in sadness, as we shall see now. And shame also is very important, because I feel that I'm not capable to protect myself. So I feel a sense of failure, of being good enough, of being inadequate, and this makes me feel shrinked and small, little, and creates a kind of like as if I am invalid in life. So this is an important aspect of work on a collective trauma, but here we need the institutions, healthy institutions that can provide group work frameworks, can provide opportunities for the people of the community to work on a healthy way with their anger and shame. The other aspect we have to work is sadness. Sadness is also important because you saw it how powerful it is in the morning, you saw it in the exercise we did. Because I say goodbye actually to something and I resist to it, I try to re-establish it. But it's all the work we did in the morning, I don't repeat. Because actually I don't say goodbye, we don't kill something from us, we just don't permit it to control our lives now. This aspect of us. We go on. But it has to be dealt with it. For example, it's if I grieve, it's grief this. If I grieve, it's like accepting that I am defeated. So some generations, some older generations, they do not get into sadness and grief because they will accept, they have to accept that in a way they are defeated. And this is the last let's say, shelter for them. Okay, they did to us all this, tortures and all this, but we keep going on. If I accept my sadness and get in grief, I must accept what you did in the morning, actually. The exercise you did in the morning. They have to be done in a collective, on a collective level. And still we need institutions for that. Still we need institutions. And this sadness reflects in paralyzation in the next generations because they feel so sad and trapped in a grief that they cannot name. They cannot name the grief. So they are entrapped in it. You can see it also like in the societies in crisis, like in Greece. It's a healthy reaction with creativity. It's incredible how many little event performance spaces emerge now. Little theaters, dance groups. A few years ago, you could not go to see anything but just mainstream things and one or two marginal things. Now, it's Thessaloniki sometimes give me the sense of a little Berlin in cultural things because they happen huge little events, very good quality most of the times, but even not, it's never truly amateurish, just amateurish. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's still happening. And you don't know where to go to watch. Little theatrical groups, performances, mixed events, little spaces open with such activities from morning to night, things in the streets happen. This is the healthy, let's say, reaction to sadness and through creativity. But you can also see the other, you can see also the hysteric aspect. Lottery is higher lottery now. Violence in football is higher. Incidents in the streets, also robberies, getting burglars into the house is higher. Street violence is higher, more intensive now. It's different ways to confront these feelings, not only of anger, but it's also sadness, because there was an American who was inviting the activists. She said it's okay to become an activist, but it would be even more okay if an activist could permit himself to grieve, to feel first the sadness, and then to check if I still want to be an activist or not. This is what she was saying. And another level is gratitude. Gratitude, I think you understand what I mean. Like saying thanking to something. That I managed to live. Because gratitude goes with guilt. And because of guilt sometimes, I cannot permit myself to feel joy, happiness and gratitude to life because I am alive. And this is very important to create, also the community must do, to create frameworks for people to experience gratitude to life and to celebrate the fact that we are alive. Can you imagine getting out from Auschwitz, for example? I cannot imagine it. I feel it as sacred in a way. Even to put it in my imagination, it's horror, just horror. And it's very natural that then I am lost in all the other levels, especially if it is a collective trauma, and not being able to celebrate the fact that I am alive. And I remember I read that once it was an accident, I don't remember the country, it was a big accident with a bus, something happened, 2 buses, a lot of young people died, not children, young people died. And when it was how it is called, when you go after a few days to we call it emotional in Greece. Not the funeral, after memorial, in the memorial, exactly, about the dead people. He went with a kind of placard writing, "Yet I am alive." It was not an insult for the parents of the dead and so on, but he wanted to use this collective meeting to celebrate that he is alive. And he had the courage to go with this placard. And it's very important, the celebration of this. And another level is the spiritual level, because such huge events, big events, but also in family things, it's still a big event, raise existential questions that cannot be answered. For example, why to me? Why to us? Now that we were very happy, now that our children were raised up successfully, they had good jobs, good families, and we had the chance to enjoy a happy ending of lives. why to happen to our family this destruction now? It's a lot of things come. It's not only the anger. It is anger in this, but also I take it from existential aspect more. But I call it spiritual because it creates the need to find, to imagine transpersonal levels. But this is very dangerous. You know my basic objection with, I have nothing against spiritualism. It's okay, anything spiritual for me. But you know, I have told you many times my basic objection of the big danger that can be in spiritualism, that you can be easily lost in a confluential state and not take the responsibility of facing what is happening to you. For example, it can be used like, it can be used like morphine. It's still okay if somebody is suffering too much and it is a creative adjustment for this person. I will respect it, but still it's not, let's say, a medicine for everything. It's up to the creative adjustment skills and possibilities of each individual. But we definitely have to work with such spiritual and existential questions from generation to generation. And give space, break the conspiracy of silence, basically. And if we want to be even more activists than we are when we are dealing with any kind of therapy, as therapists, provoke on a communal level, on a community level, provoke and create the opportunities for spaces for collective work for people. Ask to be done groups, to be volunteer work, to be create this institution, create this frame, so people can meet and work their collective issues, their collective traumatic issues. Finished. Thank you very much.